All right. Good morning, everybody. Good morning, and thank you so much all for joining us here today. On behalf of everyone at the New York City Accelerator, we are delighted to have you all joining us for the Winter 2024 Symposium. Before I dive into our agenda, I just want to extend a great thank you to all of you for taking the time to be here today, both in person and virtually through our online stream. Your presence and your engagement are invaluable as we come together to explore the crucial topics surrounding climate and environmental justice. Just a few moments, you'll be hearing from the Mayor's Office of Climate and Environmental Justice, as well as program leadership for the New York City Accelerator program. But I also want to emphasize we're very excited to be hearing from you all today. Towards the end of our program, we'll be breaking out into breakout sessions, which will be an opportunity to hear from you, to hear about the challenges that you're facing, the feedback that you have, and how we can improve the program moving forward to meet the needs of all the New York City buildings. Let's take a look at what we have in store for us today. In just a few moments, we'll have some inspiring opening remarks from Elijah Hutchinson, the Executive Director of the Mayor's Office of Climate and Environmental Justice. So be ready to be motivated by his insights. Next up, we'll be hearing from New York City Accelerator leadership, Simon Mugo. He'll be talking a little bit about the New York City program and L97 highlights, followed by Jessica Horn, the marketing manager, who'll be telling us a little bit about the campaigns and the outreach that we've been working on through the past year. We'll be wrapping up today with the breakout sessions, which will be offering an opportunity for a deeper discussion for those of us joining in person. And for those of you joining online, we hope that you'll join us in person next year. Without further ado, let's dive into a day full of insights and connections and actionable steps towards a more sustainable future. Please welcome Elijah Hutchinson, Executive Director from the Mayor's Office of Climate and Environmental Justice.
Hi, everyone. I realized that photos from before the pandemic, so I look a little different. But so glad to be here today, and thank you to the Accelerator for welcoming to give the opening remarks, and all of the community-based organizations, the partners that are here, and the Building Energy Exchange for hosting us. This is like a second office for the Mayor's Office of Climate and Environmental Justice. We just recently launched Rainproof NYC here, which is our convening with a bunch of community-based organizations to talk about how to develop policy around rain flooding in New York. So I'm really grateful for all of the resources and support that come out of the space. I wanted to, so the Mayor's Office of Climate and Environmental Justice was formed by Mayor Adams to put several climate and environmental offices under one roof where they belong. We are the first office to have environmental justice within our title, which is really exciting. And what that means is that we're, for the first time, trying to center environmental justice within our climate agenda. With a focus on equity and quality of life, MOCEJ works to make sure that the city is reducing its emissions and preparing to adapt to the intensifying impacts of climate change. And as many of you know, New York City has some of the most aggressive climate targets in the world. With the Climate Mobilization Act of 2019, whose centerpiece is Local Law 97, this requires 50,000 large buildings to reduce their emissions 40% by 2030 and 100% by 2050. So 2030 is not that far away, and neither is 2050. And that's because buildings make up 70% of the city's emissions. So if we don't address buildings in our climate strategy in New York City, we effectively don't have a climate strategy for New York City. So it's critical that we address our building stock. With the city government also signing up for reduced emissions, we have even stricter targets than the private sector. Our targets are 50% reduction by 2030, with more interim reductions by 2025 going to 40%. So we as the city are meant to be leaders within this space, and we're actually outperforming the private sector in New York City right now for our energy efficiency projects and our retrofits. These goals are, thank you. And that's thanks to DCAS and our agency partners, some of whom might be in the room. These goals are important to climate, but they're also important to public health because when we decarbonize these buildings, we create cleaner air, which is especially important to those with pre-existing health conditions like diabetes and heart disease that we know affect a lot of our disadvantaged communities in New York City who have historically been overburdened by the impacts of climate change. And may not receive all of the benefits of these investments unless we have targeted, focused programs that address these needs. These goals are important. So last spring, we released the first climate plan of the Adams administration, Plan YC, Getting Stuff Done, which is over 100 initiatives and actions that improve quality of life and protect us from climate change and build our green and economic engine. And we've already achieved some of these goals. And I wanted to go through some of the highlights, even from when I just started this past September as Executive Director of the Mayor's Office of Climate and Environmental Justice. We got the state to extend and expand the solar tax abatement program for New York City residents. It's a huge win. We've expanded Construct NYC, a green jobs workforce program. We enacted and passed the City of Yes for carbon neutrality through City Council, which will make it easier to do solar and supporting technologies that allow buildings to perform better than code and remove barriers to clean and efficient building methods. We've expanded sidewalk cleanliness by expanding waste containerization with the Department of Sanitation. We have implemented congestion pricing. We're still trying hard to get all of the final pieces of it across the finish line. But we've also created a new leadership structure for coastal resilience for New York City, establishing a new Bureau of Coastal Resilience headed by the Department of Environmental Protection, which will consolidate our efforts to design, build, operate, and manage coastal infrastructure across the city, which is really great progress. And then we've also made other progress on resilience and sustainability that include beginning our community engagement on a new program we developed called Climate Strong Communities, which looks at the communities that did not get funding from Hurricane Sandy, and then focusing more on near-term and short-term and medium-term climate solutions in those areas that maybe didn't get the kinds of funding and resources that came from previous disaster declarations or FEMA funds. And we also released the city's first long-term energy plan called Power Up on my very first day in September. This is all big progress towards meeting our goals, but we also have to address multiple sectors, not just the building sector. We're also addressing the transportation sector. We launched the Green Rides Initiative with the Taxi and Limousine Commission to transition all of our taxi and rideshare vehicles to all electric or handicap accessible by 2030, which is just 6 years away. So really transformational change for New York City. And that's going to go a long way towards cutting our transportation emissions in half by 2030 and cutting our transportation emissions to complete carbon neutrality by 2050. Last week, we worked with the Department of Housing and Preservation, HPD, to announce plans to develop a city-owned parking lot in Mott Haven into new powerhouse apartments, which is an all-electric affordable housing. And this project comes out of our climate resilient design guidelines pilot being led by MOCEJ, which safeguards buildings, infrastructure, and landscapes from extreme weather. So what we're doing is we're taking all of the climate data that we get from the New York City Panel on Climate Change, and we're integrating what those projections are into our designs for our capital projects for all city projects, which is going to which we're going to launch citywide to integrate those climate resilient design guidelines into city capital construction by 2027. And these are just a few examples of our climate resilient work that we're doing. All of this requires an incredible amount of collaboration, and so does getting Local Law 97 done. New York City Accelerator is a key partner in our efforts to help New York City buildings decarbonize under this law and avoid penalties while building the green workforce. And just yesterday, our partner, New York City Economic Development and the New York City Mayor's Office for Talent and Workforce just released the Green Economy Action Plan, which forecasts that the city's green economy will host nearly 400,000 jobs by 2040. That's up from 133,000 jobs today. And by 2040, that represents 7% of our GDP coming out of New York City. So this is huge for New York. Implementing Local Law 97, greening and decarbonizing our building stock is one of the most important we can do to fight global climate change. And that's why the city is supporting Local Law 97 and making sure people have the resources and tools to get there with compliance. That means working with New York State Public Service Commission, NYSERDA, the utilities on the next round of incentives that would be available to facilitate projects. That means working to make those incentives low or no cost, financing available for residents in disadvantaged communities, whether it's from the IRA Greenhouse Gas Reduction Fund to the J51 tax abatement. And these tax abatements could offer property tax breaks to around 1,300 co-ops and condos expected to be over their 2030 emission limits. City council is expected to enact the tax abatements and new rules that would support retrofits, including windows, roofing, insulation, parapet work, clean energy, HVAC items like heat pumps, as well as traps and pipes installations. We've also updated our CPACE program guidelines to allow for new construction and major reconstruction of buildings to qualify under those programs. And we are speaking with mortgage lenders, NYSERDA, green banks to help bring new funding and financing tools to market, along with new educational tools and resources for building owners and operators, with key partners like the Building Energy Exchange and other community-based nonprofit organizations across the city. So there's a lot up the pike, but you're already doing a lot, and I want to thank you for your continued hard work and working to get 97 done. And now I'd like to pass the floor to Simon. Thank you.
Thank you, Elijah. And good morning, everyone. My name is Simon Mugo. I'm the program manager for the New York City Accelerator program. I just want to start off by saying a quick thank you to MOCJ and their staff. Thank you for your leadership on 97 and sustainability issues in the city. And DOB, I know we have a couple of DOB representatives here. So thank you all, and all city agencies who are working towards making 97 a reality, as well as our other partners, whether service providers, the utilities, and everyone else who's along on this journey and working hard to make sure 97 is a reality. So that said, I think we can jump right into the presentation. But in order to fully understand Local Law 97 and the other building energy laws, I think it's important to take a step back to understand the reason why the city and these laws are so important to New York City's future. So in New York City, 70% of our buildings, 70% of our emissions come from buildings. And by 2050, 90% of the buildings that exist today will still be in existence. So in addition to this, as Elijah mentioned, the city has committed to carbon neutrality by 2050. And so this means that in order to achieve this goal, we really need to tackle the largest contributor of carbon emissions, which is our buildings. To this end, the city passed a number of decarbonization policies, which Elijah highlighted, which culminated in the Climate Mobilization Act of 2019. And Local Law 97 is a strong pillar within the CMA, and that's really the central piece to allow us to achieve our climate goals. So just to give you an overview of where we are in relation to Local Law 97, some key highlights to share is that DOB released a new set of guidelines in relation to Local Law 97 back in December. These published rules mark a pivotal moment in our efforts towards sustainability and reducing carbon emissions. So this update included a filing guide for the prescriptive measures for the PCMs. It also included details around what is considered a good faith effort, and also included a new credit for early electrification, which I'll cover in more detail in later slides. The second key update is the commencement of the first filing period. So the first compliance reports for Local Law 97 are due on May 1st, 2025. So as of January 1st, 2024, we've officially entered the inaugural compliance period for Local Law 97. The reports that are due on May 1st, 2025 will be based on the energy usage from 2024, which means that this year is really critical in terms of getting to the targets that we've set in terms of Local Law 97. The third item to flag is in terms of the current estimated compliance status. So for the first period, which runs from 2024 through 2029, about 11% of buildings are projected to be out of compliance. For the second period, which runs from 2030 through 2034, this number jumps to about 63%. So this is based on 2022 benchmarking data. So as the city processes the 2023 benchmarking data, we should have more of a better sense of where we are in this period. But one thing I would highlight is that this number has been reducing in terms of the number of buildings that are projected to be out of compliance in the first cycle, which I guess indicates that buildings are doing a lot of work to improve their efficiency and improve their energy use. So just to give you some more details on the DOB guidance that was released in December, I guess the top three highlights that were included as part of that release were a DOB outlined penalty mitigation pathways to cover unforeseen situations, as well as the good faith effort pathway. The second item is that DOB created a new beneficial electrification credit that allows buildings who complete electrification work before 2030 to receive a credit towards their emission targets. So if you, for instance, install an electric heat pump for your hot water or your heating, you would receive a favorable credit that would reduce your emissions. And these mitigated penalties could be applied through 2036. And so it's really a good way of incentivizing early electrification work and rewarding buildings that are doing the work to reduce their emissions. Lastly, as outlined in the penalties, DOB provided reporting requirements for both affordable housing buildings as well as houses of worship. So if you're in the audience or joining us virtually, if you're a building owner, a shareholder, a property manager, and your building is 25,000 square feet and above, as it relates to Local Law 97, you need to take action now. The Accelerator is a free resource. We can help you achieve your compliance requirements. And this really just gives you an example of some of the things that we can help with, which include helping to clarify the various Local Law 97 requirements and the different pathways as it relates to your specific building. The second is to identify your building's current greenhouse gas emission targets and comparing those to your building's set emission limit targets. We would also define which pathway is appropriate for your building. As you're aware, Local Law 97 has various pathways depending on your affordability status and other factors that are outlined in the text of the law. We can also assist in pulling together the various incentive programs, financing, and these incentive programs are offered not only by the utilities, but by state agencies as well. And we can also help identify service providers who can help complete the work. So just to clarify, the Accelerator does not do any of the installs or any of the actual work that goes into your building. We provide technical guidance, so we assist you to understand what your building would need and then connect you to service providers who would actually do the work. And lastly, I'd close by saying that we would also offer project management support. So we can help as much or as little as needed to get your project completed. Now, shifting gears to program updates. Last spring, we hosted breakout sessions similar to what we'll have today. And the topics for that session were around Local Law 97, as well as the challenges and opportunities that exist within smaller buildings. So buildings smaller than 25,000 square feet that are not subject to 97 or a host of the other building energy laws. So just to give you a report out of some key takeaways from those sessions, in terms of Local Law 97, participants discussed that there is general confusion out in the marketplace about how to comply with 97 and what measures can actually help buildings reduce their emissions. Some were awaiting rulemaking around affordable housing, which, as I mentioned earlier in the presentation, those rules have now been finalized and DOB has published those requirements. Building stakeholders also requested or made the case to have an entity or an organization that can provide the connection between making efficiency upgrades and improving tenant comfort, and also reducing utility bills, which the accelerator is, well suited to provide that service. And the last thing regarding Local Law 97 is that buildings highlighted that immediate electrification is not always a viable solution in all cases, which is a factor that we understand that some buildings need a longer runway to meet their emissions targets. But there's still items or measures that they can install now that can get them to reduce their emissions as they make longer plans to electrify. In terms of just really quick with the smaller buildings, some of the challenges that they highlighted was that they had issues locating service providers who can work with smaller buildings. So that's something that the accelerator is working towards to increase the amount of service providers that can work with smaller buildings. So looking back on what the program has achieved, as you're aware, the program has now been in existence for over 3 years. Over that time, we have engaged over 16,000 buildings and 8,500 properties or BBLs. So as you know, in New York City, you would have a BBL that could have multiple buildings, and a BBL is a building block and lot number. We've also conducted 597 feasibility studies related to solar. So we're actively supporting the New York City market to adopt solar technology. And we do this mainly by providing free technical analysis and free feasibility studies to determine if solar is a good fit for your building. In terms of affordable housing, a majority of the buildings that we've worked with to date are affordable housing. 57% of those buildings that we've worked with and have completed projects are affordable housing buildings. In terms of carbon reductions, our program and the projects we've supported to date have resulted in a reduction of 8,263 tons of CO2 equivalent. In terms of energy savings and how that translates to dollar savings on the bill, the total savings are estimated to be about a little bit over $3.5 million for our participants. In terms of training initiatives, we trained about 1,756 property managers, service providers, and other stakeholders through our learning center. And in terms of marketing and outreach, we've sent out about 73 e-blasts, 527 social media posts, and these have all resulted in over 5,000 inquiries to the program. This represents a 35% increase in inbound communication year over year as the program has progressed. In terms of Local Law 97, we've launched a number of focused campaigns around this law, and this has led to an increase of 50% in event attendance as it relates to the local laws. We've also expanded our marketing efforts to include foreign languages, which has resulted in an increase of 25% engagement with non-English speaking communities, showing the effectiveness of broadening and expanding the targeted outreach that we do through multilingual channels. So in this slide, I just want to highlight some of the types of projects that we work on or that we support our members to or participants to achieve. So at the highest, I think, is compliance assistance, and this is primarily related to Local Law 97. So we've noticed that a lot of buildings in New York who reach out to the accelerator are interested in getting support as it relates to Local Law 97. The other measures are lighting, building envelopes, so roof and wall insulation, as well as distributed generation, which relates to solar in this case. Next slide, please. And just to give you a snapshot of how our projects are distributed across the 5 boroughs, this map indicates number of projects per zip code. So it's a heat map. The darker the color, that means there's a higher concentration of projects within that zip code. And the highest zip code at this stage is zip code 11226, which is in Brooklyn, with a total number of projects exceeding 200 within that specific zip code. So really quick, just touching on our service provider program, we have about 213 service providers that are in our network. 29 of those are MWBEs and 46 are in the service category. So this includes architects, engineers, and the like. And since the last symposium, we've added 60 new service providers, and we plan to expand this service to include a wide range of service providers to ensure they're catering to the participants that we're working with. In terms of training, I think I touched on this earlier. We've trained over 1,756 participants, but over the past year, we've seen a big increase in engagement on that platform, which is the Energy Efficiency Learning Center. And if you need more information, we do have Accelerator representatives who can help provide access to it. And you can also get access to it on our website as well. And with that, I'll hand it over to Jessica Horn to talk about our marketing campaigns. Thank you.
Thank you, Simon. Good morning, everybody. My name is Jessica Horn. I lead the marketing for the NYC Accelerator. And as Simon mentioned, I'm going to cover several campaigns that we have ran over the last year, as well as what you can expect for the next 6 months or so. So what we have up on the screen now is the Financing That Fits campaign. And we launched it around this time last year to promote the program's financing offerings and the services that we have available to educate stakeholders about the financing options that are available for upgrades for both smaller buildings as well as larger buildings that need to comply with Local Law 97. Some highlights from this campaign: we launched a capital provider program where we released an RFQ and capital providers were filled that out and were able to be associated with the program. We also hosted a financing Local Law 97 webinar this past spring, where we had about 700 people RSVP and about 330 people attend. And so this just demonstrates the interest around this topic for participants, building owners, and the like. The next campaign that we ran was the Build the Future campaign that promoted the New York City Accelerator's new buildings offering, which provides education on relevant laws for new construction and different compliance pathways for those new construction projects. And this campaign brought in over 400 leads. For something to highlight on this one was we piloted lead generating gated content on our website on this particular program's webpage for documents and resources for stakeholders to download. And we received about 100 contact entries for this initiative. And it just indicated interests and engagement on the part of these stakeholders. They were, really wanted to get this content. The third campaign I want to highlight that we ran last spring into the summer was around Building Envelope, and it aimed at providing building stakeholders an overview on insulation and air sealing measures, incentives, and technical resources that the NYC Accelerator provides. Something to highlight on this campaign, you can see the image on the bottom right is from the program or the campaign's landing page. It was an interactive building infographic where you can see the different measures that would be upgraded throughout a building. And for this campaign, we saw over 300 leads come in for interest in the program as a result of this campaign. In addition to these successful campaigns that we have ran over the past year, we are really excited to announce that we are launching 2 different case studies on buildings that have complied with Local Law 97 on our website within the next week. And we have a number of other case studies coming down the pipeline. And these case studies are, featuring buildings throughout the city that are working towards Local Law 97 compliance. And, they're really intended to demonstrate that real world success. These are buildings just like yours that are doing the work. They are working with service providers. They are taking advantage of incentives and financing opportunities. They also provide some evidence of cost savings on energy bills, as well as doing the work to avoid or reduce their penalties. And then for other building owners and property managers, it shows the incentives and financing and that these buildings have taken advantage of, and intended to encourage action by other buildings. In addition to what I covered, we also participate in a lot of events and host our own events. Since June, since the last update, we've hosted about 9 events and participated in about 71. And the main focus for the majority of these events have been around Local Law 97. We've either presented as a speaker or was there as a resource to talk to participants about Local Law 97. And with these numerous events that we have participated in, we've generated almost 240 leads, 840 leads. And, with these various events, we've touched or communicated with or saw close to, just over 6,500 attendees. Another event that we have participated in is Local Law 97 in your district. Mayor Eric Adams introduced this initiative in his Getting 97 Done plan that launched in September of 2023. And this is an opportunity for each council member's district throughout the city to host an event with NYC Accelerator and they invite and they include buildings in their districts that need to get the work done that are out of compliance for Local Law 97. So far, we have hosted 8 events in 8 council members' districts since November 2023, and we have one additional one planned for next week, as well as some others on the horizon. And these are, really intended to work with the buildings specifically in each of these districts that are out of compliance. We, are focused on engaging and educating them about the law. So that's NYC Accelerator is there to present on the law, as well as all the different financing options that we have mentioned, as well as, and then we're also joined with the utility incentive providers, Con Edison and National Grid, to talk about the opportunities for incentives for Local Law 97 compliance and upgrades. And then the Mayor's Office of Climate and Environmental Justice, as well as the Department of Buildings, are also represented there to answer any questions that may come up during the presentation. So what's next? We talked a lot about what we have been doing. And so I just want to touch a little bit on what's planned for the next 6 months. So the main focus is of course around Local 97 and building compliance. Just trying to get the word out as much as possible to any and all buildings that need to comply, specifically for in 2024, but then also down the road in 2030. Also looking to provide that support for the smaller buildings in environmental justice neighborhoods who don't necessarily need to comply with Local Law 97, but can benefit from retrofits and upgrades to their energy systems. And so we want to make sure that they're aware of our services, as well as the incentives and financing options that are available to them as well. And then new buildings and major renovations. They are, looking at local law 154 that's coming up as well. And so we want to make sure that those, the developers and architecture and engineering firms are aware of our services. And then fourth focus will be supporting buildings that are transitioning off number 4 oil. There is a requirement that this year, I believe in a few months, buildings need to transition off of number 4 oil. So we just want to make sure that all the buildings that are in that category are aware and they know that this program is available to help them with that transition. And then our fifth priority is working with the Mayor's Office of Climate and Environmental Justice to on recruitment for the Carbon Challenge program. And I seem to have messed up my slides and my notes, so just give me a moment if you don't mind. So for those of you unfamiliar with the Carbon Challenge, it is a voluntary leadership initiative, a public-private partnership between the Mayor's Office of Climate and Environmental Justice and the leaders in the private, institutional, and nonprofit sectors who are committed to decarbonizing their properties. So buildings that are eligible would be any building or portfolio of buildings that's at least 10,000 square feet. And what's required to participate, we are asking these buildings to commit to reducing their greenhouse gas emissions by at least 30% within the next 10 years, or reach carbon neutrality in at least one of their buildings by 2030. And then sharing the energy consumption data annually with the Mayor's Office of Climate and Environmental Justice. So we're looking for new participants in this program. If this is something that you're interested in, whether you're in the room or on the phone, feel free to connect with NYC Accelerator, and we'll get you in touch with the right folks. So I talked a little bit about the events that we participate in and that we host, and these are some that are upcoming in the next month, and we welcome you to join us. The QR code right there, you can scan and RSVP directly on the site. It's accelerator.nyc/events. So we have a number of events coming up on laws and green buildings, retrofits for condos and co-ops, as well as for our new buildings program. So great opportunities to continue to connect with us and learn more. And I believe that brings me to the end of my presentation. Thank you all so much, and I will hand it back to Justin.
Thank you, Jessica. Thank you, Simon. Thank you, Elijah. Thank you all for joining us again. At this point, we are going to say goodbye to our virtual attendees. Before you drop off, just want to encourage you to stay in touch. You can follow us on Twitter, X, whatever we're calling it these days, at NY Climate. You can also follow us on LinkedIn at NYC Accelerator. We want to thank you for joining us virtually. And if you know someone who could benefit from engaging our program, you are welcome to submit a referral using a QR code on the screen. But thank you again virtually, and have a great rest of your day.